Welcome back to the program now to our regular panel, Mr Kroger and Stephen Conroy. Gentlemen, some, concerning news this afternoon. Thankfully, non-life-threatening injuries for the Prime Minister's security detail. But Stephen, this was a serious crash there west of Launceston as the Prime Minister and his security were travelling from Bass to Braddon. Look at these pictures. We're told from the latest advice from Tasmanian Police that the injuries are non-life-threatening, thankfully, but 4 police officers injured, Stephen.
No, look, I mean, those pictures do look absolutely dreadful, and thank God nobody's lost their life. And from the reports you've just mentioned, no one is likely to. But yeah, it just shows you the dangers of the job when your job is to protect the Prime Ministers. You're focused on other things, and unfortunately, you're in a tragic circumstance. But thank God everyone's okay.
Indeed, and Michael, it's one of these things. I've having watched the security detail with Prime Ministers over the years, you see them develop quite strong bonds and friendships. In fact, we get to know them quite well because you see the security everywhere they go, and the Prime Minister would know them even better.
Yeah, look, they're the unsung heroes of not just campaigns because they're short, but of the 3-year in and out cycle of being senior federal politicians. You get to know the federal police. I've known a number over the years. They're just quietly in the background. They're never on camera, but they are an integral part of the whole operation, whether it be Liberal or Labor, to protect our politicians who, as we've seen in recent days, who can be confronted. We've seen violent acts against politicians here and overseas. And these are very difficult jobs for these police officers. They're always on the lookout to protect the politicians they're protecting. So a hard job, and I agree with Stephen. We wish them and their families all the very best.
Stephen, let's turn our attention back to the politics and the campaign of week 1. What's your read on the difficulties that the opposition leaders clearly had this week? Has he started to find his feet?
Well, I think if you saw yesterday and today, you begin to see he is finding his feet. I mean, I'm sure he's disappointed with the first few days. Everybody from John Howard, the ultimate professional, makes mistakes like this. I'm sure there'll be other mistakes on both sides of politics over the next 5 weeks. But I'm sure Albo would be disappointed by how this week's panned out so far. We've still got today, tomorrow, then there'll be a bit of a break for Easter Sunday. But this will not be remembered when the people go into the polling booths, in 40 days' time. And even though voting starts earlier than traditionally with the postal voting that we have nowadays, I still don't believe this will ultimately be a factor by the time people are weighing up the policy positions of the parties.
Mr Kroger, we've seen other leaders have difficulties early in campaigns, and by the end of it does become overwhelmed by other things. As someone who's seen many campaigns, many leaders over the years, what's your straight-out analysis on this?
Well, I couldn't disagree with Stephen more. This is the worst I've ever seen. We've all seen mistakes that happen. Everyone's human, but this was not a mistake. This was profound ignorance. A mistake is where he would have said unemployment's 4.2. No, it's 4. Oh, okay, so I made a mistake. This was just pure ignorance where he had no idea. He clutched at 5.4, but he had no idea. And this will be remembered, and it'll be played, by the way, for the next 50 years. As the birthday cake, and John Hewson has been for 29 years now. So this will be replayed forever. It'll certainly be remembered on polling day, and he's not finding his feet. He's getting deeper in the quicksand. Kieran, he looks like a boxer who's been thrashed to death and has just turned around, punch drunk, desperately hoping his corner can hold him up before he sits on that stool. I mean, today, what did we see today? He says, we don't need offshore detention centres under our policy. And then a few hours later, he had to say, oh, no, that was wrong. He said that was wrong. He said, oh, no, I don't. I mean, the guy's campaign is littered with so many disasters. I mean, I'll tell you the one thing he's got away with is this whole this whole 3-year campaign they've been running on insecure work. For 3 years we've been told by the President of the ACTU and the Secretary of the ACTU, by Albanese and Tony Burke, that the casualisation of the Australian workforce is potentially disastrous for, secure employment. And wink, wink, this is all the fault of these nasty employers who won't give people full-time jobs. What do we find? And thank goodness, congratulations to the Fin Review, John Keogh, for being the first to publish this. Casualisation of the Australian workforce in the last 20 years has gone from under 28% to under 23%. It's gone down from 25 to under 23 in the last 2 years. This is all nonsense that Albo's been talking about. We haven't seen the ACTU leadership in the last couple of days. They've gone into hiding. This is another catastrophe that he's been conning us about for years, and he's completely wrong. So what do I think? I think it's been the worst start to a campaign I've ever seen. The worst
Stephen Conroy, the comparison there from Michael Kroger with the cake, that infamous birthday cake with Mike Willesee from
look, seriously,
a long time ago.
I understand Michael's got his job to do. No, Michael's got his job to do, which is join the pylon.
Not a hard job, Stephen. It's not hard.
Seriously,
I tell you, it's an easy job today.
Attempting to, well, not at all, Michael. Like, you've verbaled Albo completely over turnbacks and offshore detention. He did not say he didn't believe in it, didn't support it, didn't want it. That's not what he said at all. Peter Dutton.
No, he said you don't need offshore detention centres. You don't need offshore detention centres.
Well, if you're successful in turning every boat back, there are no people to put in them. That's the point he was making. He wasn't saying, I'm going to close them, we're not going to have them, and we are opposed to them. I mean, it's just a lie to try and suggest otherwise. And, I expect, oh, look, here's a half sentence we can chop off and add what we wanted to say in among all of the rest of the mix. And yes, it can work for a day or two, but this is just a complete lie that will vanish tomorrow. This is a complete untruth. So,
Stephen,
by
tell me
Dutton and
why.
Morrison.
So, Stephen, just elaborate though on why you think. Why do you think by the time we get to May 21 election day, or even May 9, when pre-poll starts 2 weeks out, Monday, May 9, why is it going to be overwhelmed by other things in your view, Stephen?
Well, because there's 5 weeks of the campaign to go, and as best as Michael will try to keep repeating this over and over again, it will not be at the forefront. People will be talking about the health policy, the education policy, the aged care policy, the economic policy that Labor will be putting forward. What our deficit, what our costings package is going to be. They'll be the substance of the issues the Australian people will be looking at over the next 5 weeks. And they won't be remembering what happened on day one. But that's not going to mean that Michael won't come on the show every single week and try and say, well, Albo's having a shocker. He's still got... that's par for the course as part of commentary when you join the pylon from the Conservative side.
No, Stephen, I've said for months now that Albo has been running an outstanding campaign, small target strategy. I haven't criticised him from that. I've said that's what you do to defeat a government going for a fourth term. I've been praising the guy's campaign strategy because he's been very clever and he's been 8 to 10% in front in the poll. So I have not been criticising him. So, mate, it's no pylon from me. But quite frankly, I've got an easy job, as does Scott Morrison. This guy's been a disaster this week. I'll tell you the other thing he's got away with. No one in the press gallery's worked this out yet. He said last week, I'm going to govern like Bob Hawke and John Howard. Now, as laughable as that is, putting that aside, what happened to Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd? Why isn't he governing like the two prime ministers that he worked for? What's happened to Rudd and Gillard? They've been blamed from history by Albo.
Well, Scott Morrison's not...
You know why? Because he's embarrassed to say, he can't say I'm going to govern...
be a prime minister. Oh, my God.
Why doesn't he say I'm going to govern like Kevin Rudd?
Govern like Tony Abbott and Malcolm Turnbull. Oh, my God. That's the best
you got. Because he's not going to. He's not going to.
Now, look,
that's because he's not going to.
One absolute furphy aside.
That's why.
Labor has never, notwithstanding news poll, pretending that they have tweaked their model. They put all these changes in since they got it disastrously wrong at the last federal election, along with all other pollsters. But let's be clear, Labor has never had a 55, 56, 44, 50, 45 lead. There's never been the 10-point lead. Labor's primary has never been at 41%. That is just poor polling by Newspoll and other polls if they've had Labor that high. Newspoll has been the absolute outlier, suggesting Labor's been on 41%. Where Labor has always been at is around about where it is now, a few points ahead of the Liberals. The reason that the Liberals have been in panic is because they don't know how to win an election from 35 or 36% of the vote. And it's tough. We've not done it. No one's done it from that low. But Labor has never been on 41. It's never been at 55, 45. That is just purely poor polling
Stephen,
by News Limited.
So
this idea that Labor's vote has collapsed
just in terms
from
of
41 to 37,
sure.
just not true.
The Prime Minister's campaigning, though, he does look like he's in his comfort zone, doesn't he, Stephen? When he's out and about and
look, he's a great campaigner. No question. He is a great campaigner. He proved that 3 years ago. He zeroes in, he stays focused, and he's very disciplined. No question. He is a great campaigner, and he proved that last time. And he's come out of the blocks this time. You know, the incumbent has the advantages of knowing the timing of the election, getting all their announcements lined up, ready to go. So he is a very good campaigner. Labor, no question, will lift its game. It will have a string of announcements that will have teeth and substance to them, and you will see Labor matching it pound for pound. But this idea that Labor's had some huge lead just needs to be put in the box. Labor has,
sure.
I've always said, you've heard me many times, optimistic, never confident. But those numbers, just not true. They're much closer to the truth
just finally,
than they've always been.
I want to get Michael's thoughts on that confidence the Prime Minister's showing. Is it enough now to deliver that second miracle?
It could, but they're behind in the polls still. But, you know, Stephen talks about Morrison being a great campaigner. A great campaigner is, first of all, you cannot be a great campaigner in federal politics unless you start from one point of starting, which is substance. If you've got no substance, you are like an actor
have a shred of
who's been given a script. Who's been given a script. Morrison's gone yesterday going through all of these statistics on how much we're spending on defence, on Medicare, on the welfare system, what GDP is, all off the top of his head, because he's been Treasurer, he's been Prime Minister. No, Albo hasn't been Treasurer, we understand that, so he's always going to be at that disadvantage. Morrison is completely on the top of his game, and that's why he's a good campaigner, because he's got substance.
Okay.
But, I'll be totally frank with you, Kieran. Monday, after Albo's mess on Monday, I could see Morrison, that press conference in the hour afterwards. Never before have I seen Morrison so confident, and I think it's because for the first time in a long time, he and his colleagues thought we're in with a big chance of winning this election.
Michael, Stephen, gentlemen, thanks. Talk to you soon.